We wish you a Merry Christmas. Henry, the green engine, had a busy timetable, but he didn't mind because it was Christmas time, and his fireman, Ted, was singing carols in his cab. Each day, Ted practiced a new choir, and Henry enjoyed listening to them. "Why are you always singing?" Henry asked. "I'm in the church choir," replied Ted. He had to learn 6 choirs in time for the carol service on Christmas Eve. That night, Henry told the other engines all about Christmas carols. "Can you teach us to sing, Henry?" Peter Percy excitedly. "Don't be silly," huffed Gordon. "Engines can't sing." "But we can whistle," said Oliver. This gave Henry an idea. Next morning, Ted came to light Henry's fire. Henry choked and stuttered on his coal, and Ted didn't know why. "What seems to be the trouble?" he asked Henry kindly. Nothing. I'm trying to sing," he replied shyly. Ted laughed. "I'm afraid engines can't sing," he sighed. Henry thought for a moment and then said, "But we can whistle." When they reached the harbour with their load, Henry whistled extra loud. "Whoop whoop! Hello, Duck," he called, and Duck whistled back. Duck whistled to Oliver, who whistled back to him, and Oliver whistled to James, who also whistled back to him, and Henry whistled to everyone. There was such a great deal of whistling to be heard. The Fat Controller was working in his office, and he soon came out. "Please be quiet," he ordered. "Engines should only whistle when approaching stations or in an emergency," he added. The engines worked quietly for the rest of the day, but Henry was disappointed. "I would like to whistle carols," he said to his fireman wistfully. That night, the engines had a visitor. Henry's fireman arrived with a songbook. "You can help me learn my Christmas carols," he said. Then he asked each engine to whistle so he could hear their sound. Gordon's whistle was loud and low. Percy was high and trim, and Toby's bell had a nice Christmassy touch. He told each engine when to whistle, and they learned to take turns. Soon they sounded like an engine orchestra. The next day was Christmas Eve. It was time for the carol service. As Henry waited for his trucks to be loaded, he saw his driver and Ted, his fireman, talking to the vicar. They all looked very concerned. "The church organ has broken." "Don't worry, Vicar," said Ted. "I have an idea." That night, the choir congregated at the church. Meanwhile, the engines were helping Ted with his idea. They waited at the station beside the church, and when Ted gave the signal, they began to whistle all that they've practiced at the night before. The congregation were delighted with the harmony of the whistles that surrounded the church. Everyone finished with "We wish you a Merry Christmas," and the vicar was delighted. On Christmas Day, the Fat Controller came to the station yard. "You are very useful engines," he said. "Your whistles sound splendid, and the vicar's service was most certainly, shall we say, an emergency."